All right, welcome back to the Prospecting Show. Today is Wednesday, September 22nd. We've been off the show for about 2 weeks here while I was traveling, but today we got fellow Canadian on the show. Breadcrumbs.io is the company name. We got Gary representing the company today, and we're gonna drop a bunch of links below. But Breadcrumbs, I always like to support the people that hail from the same nation, up north there in the frigid cold. So thanks for coming on the show. Today we're gonna talk a little bit about what you guys do, how you do it, your background. So let's go backwards first. Let's kind of rewind everything and tell us about you. Like, where'd you go to school? How did you come up with some of the work you're doing today? What do you do with Breadcrumbs? Like, give us the story.
Yeah, sure, Connor. Thanks for having me on, by the way. Where did I go to school? I went to Western, in the news right now for all the wrong reasons, but great school, had 4 wonderful years there. As I mentioned, I did poli-sci. That was my undergrad. And, I had grand visions of working in public policy and helping shape the society that we live in. And none of that came true. I ended up, my first kind of real job was collecting on student loan debt while I was paying my own student loan debt back. So it was kind of a weird place to be. But it put me on a path, right? So I was in the business world and ended up going down that financial services route and liked a lot of it, hated part of it. And the part that I hated is I didn't get to use kind of the creative side of my brain. So went back to school to kind of like shift gears, did a post-grad in marketing management, and that took me into kind of telecom as the starting point. Worked for a big telecom company, which got me hooked up into telecom related things. BlackBerry being one of them when they were kind of the creator of the smartphone space. So joined that behemoth of an organization, billions of dollars in revenue, tens of thousands of employees. I think it was 20,000 employees when I joined, and rode that roller coaster. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with the BlackBerry story. It was, from category creator to demolished by the competition. Apple and Samsung really kind of ate their lunch in that smartphone space. What most people don't know is they're still a going concern. They're still a relatively large company. They've just kind of refocused on their core software and solutions background. I still follow them. I own their stock. And the good thing about the BlackBerry experience is I touched on all kinds of parts of the marketing mix. And I worked in all kinds of different markets. I was responsible for APAC for a period of time. I was responsible for Latin America. It was super formative. And that led me eventually to Hootsuite, which was another category creator in the social media marketing space, social media management platform company. Had a couple wonderful years there. Met some great people who I reconnected with about 2 years ago. So Armando Biondi and Massimo Ceruzzi, they're my co-founders at Breadcrumbs. They previously had founded a company called Espresso, which they sold to Hootsuite. That's how we met each other. And I happened to be at a SaaS conference in Dublin, as was Armando. We ran into each other, we started chatting, and like 4 months later, we're talking about building a company. And so, peak of the pandemic, so March 2020, I guess, we founded Breadcrumbs. And the idea there was really taking all of my years of experience in the B2B marketing space, creating demand for companies, prioritizing that demand to get the most efficient results from sales organizations, taking all of that experience and building a product around. And I'm going to use the term lead scoring, which we're not really talking about all that much as a business because there's a little bit of a kind of burnt earth feeling around the idea of lead scoring. But it's something that's been around for a long time, and when done well, it's super effective. The problem is doing it well is hard. It's hard from a technology perspective. It's hard from a knowledge and people perspective and process perspective. And Breadcrumbs has reimagined it. We've reimagined it as contact scoring to identify hidden revenue opportunities in your business. And we've made it easier. You can build a model in minutes as opposed to days, weeks, months, in some cases years, at really complicated organizations. And we've made it accessible to everybody from the SMB all the way into the enterprise. And that's the roller coaster ride we're on right now, is building a company from the ground up, which is an amazing experience.
Tell us a little bit about serving that wide market, right? Because at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of people who, have been in different companies where you talked about, Research in Motion, BlackBerry, right? And like all the different brands in the past, Hootsuite, all that. Those are like mega companies. Now you're building in a smaller company, but you're also serving small micro business, small business, mid-market, enterprise. Like, how do you build a product that works for all those people?
Yeah, I honestly think it's about thinking about the product from like a first principles perspective, right? Like what are the core fundamental pain points that make something like contact scoring difficult, and solving those problems. And if you solve those problems, then it becomes something that's accessible regardless of market segment or underlying tech stack. So that's really the approach. The reality is we're a new company, so we have to be focused. We're really kind of focused in this mid-market space, companies that have an established marketing team, marketing engine, a sales organization. They have a relatively mature tech stack. They have some data already. And then we bring the tech and we bring expertise. I'm heavily involved with many of our customers. We have a Mike McFarland, who's our director of customer success, has been consulting and helping companies with things like scoring for years. We get heavily involved with our customers and we help them realize the potential of Breadcrumbs hands-on. But that's day one stuff, and we're happy to do it, and it's working really well. And I think we have a bunch of really happy customers. Eventually, we want to be able to be a little bit more self-serve on the lower end of the market and reserve some of this like high touch, white glove stuff for the enterprise side of the market.
And as you guys build this out, right, like what do you think the number one differentiator is between you guys and other contact lead scoring type services or products that are out there?
Yeah, so I think two angles to look at that question from. One is kind of from the how the sausage is made perspective. One of the things that we've built into the platform natively is recency and frequency as variables to the model. So we all know like a lead that reaches out today and has reached out multiple times or shown you multiple indicators of interest is much more interesting and much more likely to convert than a lead that hasn't engaged with you in weeks or hasn't reached out in days. That's baked into how our models work, whereas with competitors, not so much. The other is from how the sausage tastes. We make it abundantly easy to action these scores, right? To get them in front of your sales teams, to power workflows or sets of programs, campaigns, leveraging the actual outcome in a way that's operational and drives meaningful business results.
And for, let's say there's a sales organization, right? They're a 25-person company, so like kind of bottom end of mid-market, likely right on the sales side, and they're just like, hey, I want to close deals faster, and I want to, I got 1 million leads, and I want to get down to 5,000, right? That our team's going to work over the next month, right? Because we got a decent sales team. So at that point, how does it work? Give us kind of the breakdown of how, is it a platform that they just put all their data into? Does it directly integrate? Like, tell us more about how the Breadcrumbs platform actually operates.
Yeah, so we connect into, this is another kind of differentiator. We connect into a variety of downstream systems. So, multiple parts of your go-to-market tech stack. The core integration is kind of your marketing automation platform, so HubSpot or Marketo. But we plug into things like Pendo for product data or Salesforce for like your in-flight data. We connect into all those sources, and then we take a kind of two-sided view. We call it co-dynamics. So we look at the fit. So who are these leads? Who are these companies? Do they match your ICP, or how well do they match your ICP? And then we look at activity or engagement. What are the things that they're doing that show intent to purchase, If we can build models for your install base or customer base, intent to upgrade, like, or likelihood to upgrade. And then we can even build a churn model if we wanted to, right? Like, how likely is somebody to leave your business? By looking at those two variables and then layering on time, that's how kind of we figure out or drive the scores. The outcomes, I can tell you from experience, having built models like this at previous organizations. I was at a company called Chargify, as I mentioned, in Texas. When I got there, one of the first things I did was build lead scoring. I reduced the flow of leads into the sales organizations by half, and we had an incremental lift in conversion, right? So they were working less leads but closing more deals, right? At Hootsuite, we was one of my major initiatives there. Built a lead scoring model for them. There was additive. It was about identifying, opportunities in our self-serve install base for a new mid-market offering. But that effort resulted in several millions of dollars of incremental revenue. So there's tons of ways you can leverage scoring, but it's all about finding revenue that's already living within your organization, just untapped.
Tell us a little bit more about the kinds of companies you guys are looking to work with. I know you said because your Breadcrumbs as a whole is fairly new, you guys can't serve everybody, but in theory you can, right? You can serve from the smallest business all the way up to the enterprise level, but you're focusing mid-market. Tell us about those kind of companies. Are they service companies? Are they SaaS? Are they tell us more about how you can, plug in and who the ideal customer is.
Yeah, so we definitely are skewing towards SaaS. I think just because all of the founders and a bunch of our team members are from the SaaS world, so we understand that space really, really well. We have connections in that world. But it's like, that's a choice. That's not a forced function. The reality is, as long as you have some kind of assisted B2B motion, like you have reps that are talking to people, that's kind of our core variable for the acquisition application of our model, right? When it comes to upsell or cross-sell opportunities, that assisted sales motion can be there, doesn't need to be there. We have a couple companies that are, completely self-serve, product-led growth organizations, and they're leveraging us to drive some of their automated upsell programs. But yeah, for now, I would say if you're B2B, if you have a sales team, if you are at the point where, you're drowning in leads and you need to better prioritize them, or maybe it's not necessarily drowning, but you're finding yourself kind of inefficient in your use of those sales reps, we can definitely help you.
Got it. And for those people who end up listening to this, right, there's a lot of people who own businesses, small businesses, maybe they're on the executive team. If they wanted to reach out to you guys and get a demo or talk to somebody on the team, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, 100%. So check out breadcrumbs.io. There's tons of information there. We're super proud of our brand, so would love people to take a look just for that purpose. Or they can reach out to me directly, Gary@breadcrumbs.io. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Always happy to have a conversation. The reality is we're uber focused on helping people reach their potential. So many of the conversations I have don't end up in a sales conversation. We don't end up helping in terms of breadcrumbs, but we help in other ways, right? We're all about helping companies reach their full potential.
Yeah, so again, I think for those of you who are listening, right, there's a lot of people on the show who are listening to the show that are business owners, mostly in the B2B space, mostly service, right, whether that's SaaS or professional services. And I think lead scoring, like you said, it's like one of those things that nobody wants to touch it right now in terms of it's burnt out on the kind of terminology, but it's something that's definitely necessary, because if you have 10,000 leads and 3 sales guys, you're going to have to figure out who you're going to go after, right? So definitely a needed service, and it's kind of neat how you guys are positioned, to build this. What are the next steps for you guys?
Yeah, so our aspiration is to be a revenue acceleration platform. So that really what we're trying to do is look at the evolution of the traditional kind of revenue focused teams, right? Sales, marketing, customer success. and identify what needs to happen to remove the friction between those teams, right? And RevOps, revenue operations, CRO, those are manifestations of that desire for businesses. Lots of companies are, I think CRO is like the most popular, job ad right now in the SaaS space specifically. We know there's friction between those points. So Breadcrumbs' ambition is to remove that friction. One of the product evolutions that we're talking about right now is around lead routing, which historically has been super mechanical, super boring, and just a function of necessity, right? So marketing has identified a lead, it has to get in front of a BDR, SDR, or AE. How do we get it there? It goes to some kind of list or it goes through some kind of round robin, and it's up to the person on the other end to make sense of it, to get context, to decide what the next best step is. And there's better ways of doing that, right? We want to deliver these leads where these people live. AEs, live in their email for the most part, or their text message. So why aren't we delivering leads there? We know why this lead is being delivered, so why aren't we telling them instead of asking them to figure it out, right? So contextual lead delivery, giving them a little narrative, a little story as to why this lead is there. And we can look at past successes to determine what the next best action likely is, right? So why aren't we saying, hey, you spoke to Jill from Acme Corp last week. She looks a lot like this lead, Bob from XYZ Inc. You sent Jill this white paper. Do that for Bob, right? And see what happens. So that's one of the things that we're working on. And the idea is to just remove this friction in your revenue generating teams.
Yeah, no, and I think that's definitely the future of sales too, because right now, more than ever, tons of people are online and there's all this lead flow at the top of the funnel, right? It's like opt into this, here's this Facebook ad, here's this, whatever the channel is, right? Here's the white paper, here's the ebook, here's the whatever, right? And so you get all this deal flow coming in at the top of the funnel, but the question is how do we chop that, to your point, how do you chop that by 50% and talk to the people that actually matter? Because the SDR, the BDR, or whoever can only talk to, so many people a day. Maybe they can do 8 demos a day, 5 days a week. And that's assuming you had enough lead flow to make that happen, right? Like that, right. There's only,
and that's a lot. That's a big number. 8 demos, 5 days a week. That's a lot for the average AE. I think, for sure. I think we've talked about big data a lot a few years ago. And it was like the hot idea, the hot topic. It's not so hot anymore. But we're still living in a world where the assumption is data is the end all be all, right? And all we're doing is collecting a shit ton of it. We're delivering that in an unstructured, unformatted way to a bunch of our teams downstream and asking them to make sense of it. And I think the position at Breadcrumbs is it's not necessarily about more data, it's about the right data, right? Prioritizing that. And then it's about making sense of it, right? And if you visit breadcrumbs.io, our blog specifically, you'll see that there's a ton of content there about the right data, making sense of that data, and operationalizing that data so that you actually extract value from it instead of just collecting it for the sake of collecting.
Yeah, and again, for those people who listen to this that are maybe you're on a sales team, you're a BDR, you're an AE, you're maybe the owner, CRO, right? That's like you said, a common kind of thing that people are putting out there now. Reach out to Gary, right? We're going to drop LinkedIn profile, we'll drop the email and the website, but it's breadcrumbs.io, Gary at breadcrumbs.io, and they'll put the LinkedIn profile so you can reach out, maybe connect. And you have a lot of SaaS experience. So for those of you who are trying to build SaaS companies, do you think Breadcrumbs would be a good fit? It's probably worth a conversation anyways with Gary. We're going to wrap it up there real nice and tight for the show. I appreciate you coming on the Prospecting Show and kind of sharing what you guys are doing. And again, breadcrumbs.io, check that out. We'll put it in the description, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Connor. Appreciate it.